let's start looking into how we can make our own Path of Exile ice crown. Hi everyone, George here, and this is the first of several videos on my ambitious journey to try to make an ice crown from Path of Exile. Now this one wasn't directly recommended by anyone, but there were a few other requests similar to it, and for some reason I just decided to gravitate towards the ice crown. Here we can see one of the final prints. Before we take a look at this and some of the other things I've been working on, why don't we dive in instead with how I actually did all this. So for the ice crown, of course, the first thing, as always, is to search for reference material. I get a tiny bit distracted by other things, but eventually I find enough. So the next step is to bring all that reference material into Adobe Photoshop and then start trying to figure out exactly what I'm making. Here I'm just trying to figure out exactly how many of these ice shards or icicles are actually on the top of the mask. Start off in Maya, create a new project, and of course, once that's in there, bring the reference material in as a series of planes. First thing I do is start tackling the central icicle using just a simple polygonal box, extruding it up and pulling it apart. I figure I might be able to get away with just duplicating this one multiple times. At the moment I'm also just doing a low poly version, not quite sure at this time if I was going to bring it into ZBrush or if I could do everything inside of Maya. I also decide to give it a slight bend using a non-linear deformer. Now that I have that finished, I'm going to duplicate it out and basically create the general structure of what the crown is going to be. Now the crown itself hovers above the user's head or around the user's head. There's nothing really holds it on there, so I'm going to have to figure that one out. Now I'm just playing with the different sizes and scales of the icicles, while in the actual reference material, all the ones except for the front one are the same size. Now this is my crown, so I figured I might make it a little bit more interesting. Then go ahead and kill all of the faces on one side and duplicate the entire thing to the other side. Now here I'm using a curve because I'm trying to think of how I'm going to connect all this stuff together, and I get the idea that maybe that sort of a waving pattern that's inside of the mask, or excuse me, that inside of the crown can be used to stitch the entire thing together, actually give it some support. Now, I ran into a huge problem. Once again, Snagit, my recording software, lost all of my work. And so what you're seeing here is my first attempt where I've cut the object into quarters. This was a mistake. There was no reason for me to quarter it. I could have just halved it. But the idea is I want to build it actually vertically up to maximize space. I have a lot more build volume there. So the first print actually failed pretty horribly. I only got about halfway through it, as we can see here. And I actually used transparent filament, so you're probably wondering why the heck it's blue. And this is a technique I was going to save for the chromatic orb, which I'd started working on last week, but didn't really like the progress I was making, so I kind of put it on the shelf. But the idea here is you actually use transparent filament and you apply Sharpie to it before it goes into the extruder. And as it goes in, it picks up the color, obviously, and as it's heated, the color sort of becomes bound to the filament, so it doesn't rub back off. It's not like trying to color it with an actual Sharpie. But as we can see here, this was way too blue. Did not turn out properly at all. So then let's jump back really quick and take a look at what I did next. And that is, instead of cutting into quarters, I decided to just cut it into halves. So now we have the halves of this object. So I bring it over, I slice it about midway through the entire object, so it's equal in height. And I then export these out and bring them into Cura once again. And once they're in Cura, I go ahead and come up with a respectable size for this first icicle. Now, of course, the result of that print is this one here, and I was incredibly lucky with this one. There were many times when it almost failed. In fact, there are little bits of sort of unevenness along the top part. And the flaw with this one is it's too thin and it's too long. I'm going to need to widen it, and especially here at the top in comparison to its overall height. Now, you'll notice another interesting feature with this, and that is the fact that it actually has that blue tint to it. And what I learned is that if you put that Sharpie in your extruder, expect it to continue to be part of the filament color for probably the next 30 minutes, which is about how this happens. Now, it did create a really interesting and nice bleed out effect, but I have no way of controlling this at this time. So while it's interesting and could be used for a creative way, it's not something I'm going to probably be able to work into the whole final product. Now, after that, I decided to print several smaller versions, and I ran into a problem. I was able to bind the other one together just with super glue, and that held strong. But these smaller ones have such a small amount of surface area, and they're so smooth that no super glue is going to work, no glue stick will work, so I'll have to come up with another way of bonding these. One thing I'm thinking of doing is actually making a ridge here at the bottom, so the two couple together, and they lock pretty easily that way, or just using a 3D pen to sort of seal the two back together, which I can use. But anyway, here's the two you can see here. So these are the wrong sizes. This is the right one. So the last thing now I'm experimenting with is, so that's just making the icicles, the shards on the helmet. I still need to create that pattern inside, and it glows. I mean, the actual effect is glowing. So once again, we're going to jump back into the world of Arduinos or microcontrollers or whatever you want to use. I'm just using this now because it's simple and easy. But here what we can see is I cut into the back of one of these and slice my hand doing it. But we have a simple LED in the background with a little bit of wax paper to help diffuse it, and you can kind of see that going through right there, and it actually is lightly pulsing on and off. But this could add a lot, I think, to the crown, since this thing is going to be on your head. If I use a really small microcontroller, I can put that on the top of the head with some sort of a strap, and then put a little battery pack, and then hopefully you'll have an entire glowing crown above your head. Comment below what you think of the icicle design. I spent about 30 minutes in ZBrush actually kind of carving it out to look this way. Let me know what you think about the color as well with the Sharpie, if that's something I should continue to pursue. And if you've got any ideas for better ways to diffuse the LED light inside of here, maybe injecting a glue gun into it or something else, just filling the entire thing up with some semi-permeable diffuser, let me know below. Well, thanks everyone. I'll probably have another update on this project sometime next week when hopefully I have some way of connecting all these elements together on top of my head. So long, bye.